What's up, gang? Welcome back to the Quick Tip series. I have a new set behind me, if you will. We are finally fully moved into the new house in Florida. We've been living with my folks for the past year while this house has been being built. But we are happy to say in the new year we are finally here in the new house permanently. And I'm happy to bring the first quick tip to you all from Florida. Well, technically, I'm recording from Florida this intro. This video was recorded 3 or 4 years ago, I believe. But I just wanted to jump in here real quick, say thank you for watching. Please make sure to subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. And enjoy the quick tip. This one's on doing chipping via traditional brush. And it was recorded, like I said, about 3-4 years ago for my Patreon, and I'm now trickling those out to the public on YouTube. If you enjoyed this quick tip, feel free to check out my Patreon. I am a full-time content creator, and this is how I pay for all my bills and everything else that I do. So do me a favor and check out the link down below, and you'll be able to get into my Patreon and check it out. I have a couple of tiers. One is just the quick tip tutorial. It's kind of cheap and you get access to every one of the tutorials I do. So without further ado, enjoy the tutorial. Alright guys, this one, full disclosure, is going to be very raw, uncut. Audio might suck. In fact, I don't even know if the audio is going to work, but it's basically because I'm not done loading all the programs I need to load onto the new PC. So I'm sorry, but I wanted to do a quick tip anyway. And first and foremost, wish you all a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Hanukkah, whatever you're celebrating. I just hope that you all have a wonderful season, even if you're not celebrating. Whatever you're doing, I just want to express my sincere thanks for supporting me. I mean, it means the world to me. In a time where, honestly, when Corona started, I told my wife I was screwed. And you guys have kept us more than afloat. I've had a great year, thanks to all of you, despite all the loss we've had as far as not being able to teach at conventions and whatnot, and losing that part of my income. Your support means the world to me, and I can't thank you guys enough, so I really hope that you have a wonderful holiday season. This one is going to be about weathering, specifically vehicles, although these techniques can be used on units as well, by all means on terrain. But this was a suggestion from one of you patrons requested that I do this video. So I'm gonna kind of like try to blast through these. I've already prepared a few different spots for further techniques, but what I want to point out is the colors don't matter, okay? So weathering typically is done once you have almost all of your miniature done, or at the very least, your decals. You have to have the decals down, because it makes no sense to weather something and then put on these decals, right? Because then it'll just look weird. It won't look like it's part of the model, you know? These things are put on there when these things are fresh off the factory. Maybe some of them get slapped on in the field. You know, you might have some that look like the unit might have put like an incantation or a spell or a prayer or whatever your army is, you know. Some plague marine walked around back and decided to scribe on a little prayer to Nurgle or something on the rhino, right? But then you have like iconography that you've put on there, or, you know, whatever it is. That can come after it's been weathered or in the battle, but even your freehand should definitely get the weathering treatment. It really freaking pained me to have to weather this panel, but in order to make it look like part of the vehicle, you've got to do what you got to do, right? So at the very least, put your decals on first after you've gotten your base tones down. your bases. I also like to do panel lining, so I did some panel lining here, and you'll notice that it gets very sloppy up here. That's kind of on purpose. I've also smudged with my finger some of the paint up here, like right here, again on purpose, because what I want you guys to think about is I'm very, very OCD about perfectionism, symmetry, and numbers. They're like kind of my big OCDs, right? So the thing that you really got to kind of break yourself of feeling when you're doing especially vehicles is any of these mess ups, they don't matter. You know, a lot of people will stress and be like, oh, the whole paint job's ruined. Don't stress about it. Don't worry about it, because you can think of weathering as an opportunity to kind of hide those things. So one of the most basic ways to add chipping to a model is by grabbing some foam, be it pluck foam from your army carrying case, some kind of dense foam. My son had this, like, it's called the Baby Frida or something like that. It's basically this most disgusting tool. It's like a tube that you stick in an infant's nose, and then you put a little piece into your mouth, a hose, and you put that in your mouth and you suck out the kid's snot. It's probably one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my life, and I've only ever used it twice because the horror of sucking my kid's snot into my mouth, even though you physically can't, just freaked me out. And the point being for this disgusting story is it came with these filters, right? And I saw the sponge that these little cylindrical filters came with. I was like, damn, that would be really good for weathering and chipping. So I took the foam kind of sprue, if you will, after my wife used the last filter. These like go in line of the hose so you don't suck up the snot in your mouth. So what you do is you just kind of pull off a piece, right? And then you can use tweezers. I do everything and anything I possibly can to take any geometrical value out of it. Like, this is very flat on three sides. So here, here, and here, it's a corner. So like, I'll kind of just pluck at it and just destroy it so that it has way more texture. And you see how that's very ununiform, very chaotic. I don't know if it's focusing or not. But yeah, it's very chaotic, right? And that's the side that you want to use to kind of do your stippling. Now I have one that I created and glued to the back of a skewer that I use a lot. All this is just, again, it's changed. There's no geometrical shape to it. I like using them over and over again because as it gets crustier, it creates more chaotic patterns. But the point is, you basically take your palette, right? And I start with black brown. And I'll get into the reason why I do all my chipping and scratches in like a black brown or a deeper color that's not black. You can see black next to it. I'll explain that in the next kind of tip, if you will. But I pick up my paint. Now, if I were to go onto the model with this right now, it would basically splotch. See that? So what I want to do is kind of work most of that paint off, right? And then when I come over to this model, say I've got a big old splotch right here that I messed up with the panel lining, that's where I'm going to weather. You just kind of dab it on. Maybe I've taken too much off there, which doesn't have to be a bad thing. You can also dab it on paper towel, but don't get too aggressive with it. But I'm not going to come in here and cram it onto the model, okay? I want to kind of just barely touch it. Again, not enough paint. It's been a couple of minutes since I've done this, so give me a second. But what I want to do is kind of just work this sponge and kind of blop, 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 blop. You know, you're not trying to create any textural value. You're just trying to see this, how I'm dabbing out on my paper towel. I'm getting these big old influences. That's why I don't like to jam it down. See how that's more modeled up? That's what I'm looking for. Because this is supposed to be a chip. It's not supposed to be like super, super crazy or anything, right? But anyway, I work around all those weird like discolorations, if you will, just to kind of work them out of the picture. Along this line here, I could just come in and kind of rough up the edge right where those piles are, and then it turns it into kind of more or less a chipping situation where it's started to chip away, and you've hidden that blotch. Same thing over here. You know, I'll just kind of come in here and work my sponge, and maybe stay closer to the edges, by the way. If you're on an edge, stay as uniform to that edge as you can. And then maybe I come in and that's way too linear, right? So I might hit up the corner just a little bit more. And if it's on a cornered edge like this, and you can, go over the edge too. It's not going to be perfectly uniform, you know what I mean? So just kind of splotch it in there and get your stippling in there. This is essentially just stippling, right? So that's one way of getting our chips, right? But let's say you're not perfectly satisfied with the pattern. Really what you should be doing is trying not to create a pattern, because our mind essentially wants to create a pattern. So you can come in here, and one of the things I'll do is I'll start stippling in, trying to get it less uniform just on the edges, and all I'm doing is, see these really micro dots that I'm doing? That's all I'm doing, okay? So you come in there and you maybe soften the edge up a bit. I like to use a really fine brush with some thinned paint, and then just kind of create some of that more stippling, more dabbing. If you don't know what a stipple is literally just a dot of paint. Pointillism, for those of you who are familiar with traditional art forms, is very similar technique, if you will. But essentially you just are putting little dots. You're using the very edge of your brush to kind of dot, right? And that's all I'm doing along this. Now, see how this is very bulbous? I don't like that. That's not natural. So what I'll do is I'll come in and maybe I'll just turn it around a little bit so that I can hit just the edge of this panel, and I'll stipple it in a little bit to kind of create more of a natural shape, like as if something had come through and maybe brushed its side and created this big old cut, or this big old chunk of corrosion. So don't be afraid to kind of change your shape so it's not so geometrical, if you will. Trying to get away from shapes like triangles and circles and rectangles and stuff is very important. And then if something ripped there, keep narrative in your brain, right? So something came through and rubbed through this, so why wouldn't this be all jacked up, right? So then I come through and I add some stippling there and just kind of break it up. I could go all the way up this panel, but it won't look natural. So you just break it up. The other thing you can do is there's a lot of wear on corners, so I'll just kind of very lightly edge highlight, if you will, right? And just do one of these where like the paint has kind of chipped off there, but don't leave it there because nothing is perfectly straight, right? So you just kind of very lightly stipple in that edge, because it's not going to be uniform. It's not going to be a perfect little straight line, if you will. So keep the mind naturally wants to create a pattern, right? So you gotta kind of like break your brain free of that subconscious idea that we're creating a pattern. Okay, so sometimes what I'll do is I'll get in here and I'll start working on a model, and I get into that mindset. So then what I'll do is I'll close my eyes. I'll kind of, because I naturally keep a very tight pattern, but I'll just close my eyes, and I got my eyes closed right now, and I just kind of like do my thing. You know, open your eyes a little bit every now and then, like go 1 2 3 4 5, open your eyes and look, so that you're not going like, okay, I know I'm over here, but next thing you know you're actually over here. You know, go like 1 2 3 4 5, and then open your eyes. 1 2 3 4 5, and then open your eyes. You know, that way you know where you're at. You can keep some control, but you don't have your eyes wide open, kind of creating that pattern, if you will. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, whatever, feel free to hit me up. The Discord is the best way to get a hold of me, but we're constantly talking in the Patreon Discord channel. But feel free to PM me too. And I hope you guys all have a great, great holiday recess, whatever you're doing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you. Take care of yourselves.